So everyone, and welcome to another edition of Catching Up on JP. This one is part 7, where we talk about first some smaller events, the training for Kaede and then the training for Asuka, and then our prime event for today. We're going to talk about I'll Keep Waving at You, which is actually a pretty good event. Like, I actually really like this one. And by the way, I never actually mentioned this on any of the other videos, but in the description there'll be time codes for all of these different events if you want to look at a specific one without watching the other ones. So if you want to skip ahead to the I'll Keep Waving at You event, you can be free to do so, because training events are not that great. However, let's start out with our first event, the training for Kaede. So we see that Kaede meets with Rina and Momoko in her garden behind her house, and they do some gardening, but Kaede figures out that she is dreaming. She does become lucid, and she dreams that this garden, however, is disappearing, because of course there's some nearby construction going on, and the thing is, we know all of this already. This is mirroring the situation that led to her wish, where some apartment building was being built near her house, and that would have ruined her garden, because the building was so big that there would have been so much shadow, there wouldn't have been any light left to grow stuff in the garden. So she made that wish to make that big building not to be built, and so it wasn't built, and that was her wish. And we see, though, however, that in that dream then ends, and suddenly she is standing face to face with her doppel. And the doppel tells her that Kaede is always taking the path of least resistance, that she's always trying to make things easy for herself, and that often includes running away, doing things her own way, relying on other people for help. She doesn't really live her own life in that way, and so the doppel basically says that she should just sort of commit to that sort of lifestyle. However, of course, Kaede does reject that, and it says, go friendship and everything, yay, power of friendship, and always is awesome and everything. And we see in a little bit of a flashback that just before this, Kaede wanted to leave the team, but then didn't want to leave the team, because that's just Team Kamado. They have some sort of discussion like this every single day. However, Kaede says, like, yeah, no, I like my friends, and therefore I'm going to work on myself to not be trying to basically take the path of least resistance all the time and try to rely on my friends, and instead fight together with my friends. So she wakes up at Mitama's place, where Mitama was doing things to her, and she says, I don't have time to rest, I need to help my friends and help fight together with my friends and whatever, because they're currently fighting some witch. And so Kaede has learned that she needs to stand up for herself, which probably still won't make her a better character. Like, stronger character, I mean. The training for Asuka. We start out with Asuka talking to her doppel immediately, because in every single training event, the character talks to that doppel, and in this event, they just decide to immediately start with that. So she's already talking to her doppel, and the doppel says that she is not worthy of the Ryushin Ryu fighting style, which is basically the sort of style that she is training at her dojo, and it's just, you're not worthy of this, because the doppel says that Asuka has made her wish to change something about the world. She has used this miracle power to change the world, and that is not right. That is a wrong thing to do. And Asuka says, you are right, doppel, I've brought shame upon myself, I need to atone with my life, as Asuka always talks about. However, then Asuka remembers how her father has been talking to her with these encouraging words about how she should decide for herself what is right and what is wrong, and always live by what she believes is right. And so she says, no, I believe that my wish was right, and therefore I'm totally fine. And the doppel just disappears, and everything is fine again. However, not before Asuka sort of tries to fight her own doppel and somehow wins, even though the doppel just before this says, you can't beat me because I'm you, and if you beat me, you'll die as well. But then she does beat her doppel, and then the doppel disappears. I don't know, don't worry about this. It's logic, and Asuka is probably, I'm not trying to meme or anything, but Asuka is probably the least intelligent character in the entire game, and I think that's on purpose. But yeah, anyway, so the doppel disappears, she wakes up again, and she was in some forest, and she was meditating, and I guess while meditating, she somehow convinced herself that her wish was wrong, and that's how the entire story started, and that's how this event ends. That was an entire training. I'll keep waving at you. This is the event that centers around Sakuya and Ryoko, and guys, get over Sakuya's eyes. They're not... Like, yeah, she's got big eyes, whatever. Let's get into the actual story and not worry about trivial stuff like that anymore. So, as it turned out, during the events of Crimson Resolve, where we know that Sakuya was also part, she was one of the confidants, maybe if not the confidant for Yuna during most of that event, and Sakuya of course was fighting in that war against other gangs as well. And as it turned out, during that war, Sakuya was forced to kill her best friend, and so that sort of trauma that she received from from having to kill her best friend sort of basically gave her PTSD. They don't call it PTSD in the story, but she has nightmares, she has panic attacks, she can't think straight anymore. She wakes up at night with like having these visions of how she killed her best friend. And so even though I don't think they necessarily say it's PTSD, but it's PTSD basically. So in the beginning of that event, she does get sent by Yuna, her superior, to the Kamihama University affiliated school. It's basically the school that Iroha goes to, but also the school that Kamore and some other characters go to. And she's sent there to basically spy on as many KMU, like Kamihama Maga Union members as possible. Especially Iroha, because she's the leader of the Kamihama Maga Union, and so she's supposed to spy on her. However, while she's there, because she really likes running, she joins the track and field team and makes some new friends, the track and field team, because she's a really, really good runner. And she makes some new friends there. However, she still keeps suffering from those nightmares and from more panic attacks, and she has this fear that if she gets close to any of these new friends, that she might end up having to fight them and even kill them again someday. And so what she does is she anonymously starts this rumor that she's being bullied, that Sakuya is being bullied, and specifically does this so that other people see that and go, oh, this is someone who gets bullied a lot, I should stay away from them. And so she tries to gain distance to other people with that, and basically breaks off all of her friendships that she had until that point. However, one day, Sakuya is out and she's fighting a witch in Kamihama, and while she's fighting that witch, she suddenly gets joined by another character, Ryoko, and towards the end of that fight, they both fight together, and Ryoko, after the fight, she has the grief seed, but she gives the grief seed to Sakuya. However, Ryoko, at the end of that, suddenly collapses from hunger, because, in case you don't know much about Ryoko, she has been basically brought up in a Buddhist temple, or at a Buddhist temple, and so she has been raised at sort of to be on the Buddhist spiritual journey, and so she lives a very ascetic lifestyle, ascetic lifestyle, where she basically starves herself of all the earthly pleasures, including food, in order to reach higher spiritual enlightenment. But yeah, she's basically starving herself as part of her religion, and so she collapses on that spot from hunger. However, Sakuya ends up sharing some food with her, and very important thing at this point, they both realize that they're both from different factions, because Ryoko is from Tokime clan, and Sakuya is from Promised Blood, and both of those factions kind of want to kill each other at this point in the story. So they both realize that they're from different factions. However, Sakuya shares some food with Ryoko, and they both fought together, and Ryoko gave her the grief seed, and so they both realize, like, hey, you're not a bad guy, you're a good person. So they sort of say to each other, and Ryoko, she knows that Sakuya is a good person, not just because she shared food with an enemy, but also because Ryoko realizes that Sakuya has really well-toned legs, and like firm legs, they're really juicy legs, and they're really muscular. And Ryoko says, like, oh, these legs, I see that your legs are so well-toned and so well-shaped and so firm and thick, and the only way to achieve such legs is with hard work. And because you're such a hard worker, that must mean that you are a good person. I'm not even memeing here, that's literally what happens in the story, because Ryoko has a giant leg fetish. Anyway, so they become friends with food and legs. And of course, after this, they hang out some more, they become really good friends, and as it turns out, through that friendship, Sakuya actually starts recovering from her nightmares, from her panic attacks. She's doing better. However, there is still one thing that is always plaguing her every day, especially now after a few days or weeks even, and she gets gripped by this fear that maybe someday she might have to kill Ryoko, that she might become a best friend, and then one day she'll have to kill her best friend again, and she panics from that, and she tries to basically sort of distance herself as much as she can from Ryoko, but Ryoko understands what is going on with Sakuya. She's really tentative in that way, and so what she does is she basically spends the entire day walking around the city trying to find as much info as she can on Sakuya. And she actually goes to the traveling justice place, to Livia's, where she meets with Ranka, who is another Promised Blood member. They don't fight because Ranka, she's also worried about Sakuya, because Ranka has also noticed that something is wrong with Sakuya, that she's like having these problems with PTSD basically. And so Ranka shares some information about Sakuya with Ryoko, and she basically tells her the story of Futatsuki City, basically the entire story of Crimson Resolve she tells to Ryoko. And so Ryoko decides that she needs to somehow help Sakuya get over those fears. And so what she says is, she comes up to Sakuya and says, you know what, fight me. She says to Sakuya, I'm going to let you fight me, and we're going to battle it out, and I'm basically going to be, you can basically beat me up as much as you want, because I'm going to show you that I cannot die. Because, of course, Sakuya has the fear that she's at some point going to kill her best friend again, and so Ryoko says, I cannot die, fight me with all you have, and I'll show you that you cannot kill me. And so they fight it out for a bit, and Sakuya also, however, during that fight comes to understand that Ryoko is once again really hungry and completely tired because of course Ryoko has spent the entire day trying to find as much information that could help Sakuya throughout the entire day, and so Sakuya ends up faltering, and she also in the end of that fight she remembers some words that her best friend had left her with before. And her best friend has basically told her to basically look forward, look towards the future, look to try and live the best life that you can, and don't worry so much about the past. Look ahead, basically. And so in the end, they sort of come to a conclusion, to a deal that they basically make, that they will have one last time where both of them go together to a restaurant. They will share a meal together. They will talk about stuff. They will basically act like the best friends that they are. But at the end of that, after the end of that meal, they decide that they need to part ways, because the conflict, the big war basically between those two factions, is about to start in full, and they basically say that love can bloom on the battlefield. No, they don't say that, but they say that they will meet again. But before they can meet as friends, they will meet again on the battlefield, and they both basically hope that they will be able to survive this conflict, so that after the conflict is done, after all the battles are done, that they can meet up again and become best friends again, maybe even more than friends, wink wink, after everything is over. However, it's basically a giant death flag for both of these characters, like, hey, one day after the battle, come to me and we'll be best friends again. That's a giant death flag for both of these, so I don't know. But then again, characters don't usually die in main story anyway, but even so, they probably get over the death flags, and they'll probably actually end up together one day, who knows. But yeah, the last thing that Ryoko says to Sakuya is, hey, if we're actually on the battlefield and fighting each other, you can try fighting me again, because you know I can't die. But that's that. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.